Hello, good evening, everybody. By popular demand, we have got Graham Moore back, leader of the English Constitution Society. We interviewed him a month ago. It's heading for 100,000 views. We're at 70,000. It's just rising constantly. And so many people in the comments and have sent me private messages. You got to get Graham back on. And what a hugely busy week it is. Last time we spoke to Graham, he was about to run in Runcorn, which is the neighboring town to my hometown of Widnes. And a lot of shenanigans have occurred because Graham ran for election a decade or so ago and got 50 votes. And hey, presto, he gets another 50 this time round, the probability of which is very low, to say the least. Anyway, man, thank you back on. We see you've got a nice tan and you ran in Runcorn. I mean, there's so much. There's Tommy Robinson. There's Lucy Connelly. There's Farage's speech I listened to today. Tommy Robinson got released today. Where would you like to begin, Graham? With the Runcorn election?
I will start with the Runcorn, but I do want to say something before I start, right? So Tommy Robinson come out of prison today, right? And he was wearing a mega hat, right? And just to let everyone know, we have had this mega hat in different colours, right? With the Constitution is the solution on one side, all embroidered, and the English flag on the other side. We've got red ones, white ones, pink ones, blue ones, right? Just to let you know, we was making them years ago, just to let everyone know that. So, and I wear mine regularly and with pride. So, of course, yeah, there's a lot of things going on at the moment. So it may be better just to start with a Runcorn because it's, Sean, I can't tell you how important this case is, not only constitutionally, but your common law rights, your constitutional rights, your inalienable rights and international human right is literally suffrage. So there's something called universal suffrage, passive and active suffrage. Everyone understands you have the right to vote, and whoever you vote for, it must be recorded in law properly. If there's any fraud, any shenanigans, it's a serious criminal offence. It's a serious private right injury, and it is also a serious criminal offence. So just to make sure, as you've led up to that, you was one of the channels that promoted us. The mainstream media weren't touching us. So again, all real alternative views channels, which is you're one of them, was putting the information up about us. And we did really well, to be fair. When we was campaigning, just to give you another indication before I get on to the actual count, we had a number of what we called action days or campaign days. Two of them, one was in Frogsham, the other one was in Runcorn itself, outside the old police station. Local icons, people understood what we was doing. There was 30, 40 people there, all with our banners and balls. The locals was bibbing us, cheering us. People were stopping in cars, literally coming up saying, I'm voting for you, right? So the police decided to send me emails demanding to know where we was holding these events, how many people would be there, and they would put police officers there because they allege that we're some far right group when in fact what we stand for is the English Constitution, self-determination, the number one human right. And the biggie is we stand up for retirees on the worst pensions in Europe and disabled people, right? So we're doing the job for working class people that Labour should be doing and are not, right? And certainly the Tories are not, right? So the next thing, they're on the writ, by the way, the Chief Constable of Cheshire, because they didn't, our Wikipedia page was taken down, that's election interference. And the second group of people who are on there is a lady called Emma Gilthorpe, who is the CEO of the Royal Mail, because we paid for £800 for 45,400 leaflets to be delivered by the Royal Mail. Bearing in mind that all the bigger parties spend £180,000 on their by-election. We've got local people, disabled people, retirees donating to us to help us, and a £500 deposit that we lose if we don't get more than 5% of the vote. Again, all of this information, there was a leaflet specific. It was sanctioned by the Royal Mail, in other words, approved. There's a whole legal thing that you have to go through. And guess what? The Royal Mail didn't deliver them, right? So, but they told me that they did. They said that they investigated and they did. And we've got a number of statements from local constituents telling us in affidavits, we did not receive one of these leaflets. So they have not been delivered. That is election interference by the Royal Mail. And it just so happens that Emma Guilford's stepfather is a 40-year Tory peer, right? So it's pretty incestuous, this whole political sham that's going on at the moment. So when we get to the count, wearing our mega hats, by the way, I counted 116 votes. There was 2 bundles of 50, and this is just a fraction of the count that we could see. And then some loose, which I estimated at 16 votes. And then when the count come out at 50 votes, and obviously anyone will know this, to be a good liar, you have to have a very good memory. To cheat in elections, you have to have an even better memory, and certainly remember when I stood in Tooting in South London, which was Sadiq Khan's constituency when he became mayor of London, he stood down and they wanted to put their own little person in place. And what did I get? Exactly 50 votes. But what your audience don't know is they're bundled in 50s. So when I originally did the maths on it, I said it was 40,000 elections to 1. Remember, elections are every 4 years or randomly if they're by-elections. So it would take literally 400 years for me to get that result, right? So it's impossible. But then I was told, I was contacted by a member of the Royal Statistical Society, and they said, Graham, you're wrong. I said, am I? They said, yeah, it's 1,000,000 to 1, right? And I said, would you be prepared to make an expert witness statement to that effect and present it to the High Court? He said, yes, I would, right? So we've got an expert witness from the Royal Statistical Society saying it's a 1,000,000 to 1. So it's obvious there was major fraud going on. Most people say to me, yeah, but Sarah Putin won. So there was 6 votes in it between Labour and Sean, remember this, and you'll know that area like anything, right? 1 week before the election, so the week of the election was St. George's Day. There was English flags everywhere. We couldn't have hoped for better, right? We had all our English boards out on our campaign days. 1 week before the poll day, the actual election day, Keir Starmer decides, and if you know that area, you'll know that most of them are Scousers in Runcorn and Helsby. Keir Starmer decides to go up to Liverpool and say, I effing hate Liverpool. So he might as well have said, I effing hate Scousers, right? Not only did he do that the week before the election, the reason why the election was called was because the Labour candidate had beat up outside a pub a constituent, got sent to prison for 4 months, and then got released on his straight up appeal straight away after 2 days of a prison sentence, crying his eyes out because he got sent to prison for beating up a constituent, right? He got released. I think of Lucy Connelly, right? I mean, she wasn't an MP, and she certainly never beat up a constituent, right? So you got this situation. So we get to the election, 50 votes. There's only 6 votes in it. If my 66 votes were put into the pile by accident to Sarah Patchin, then she is not the returned MP. But what it looks more likely is that the Labour vote had absolutely collapsed. And that means they were stealing them from other candidates and putting them in their pile in the middle part of the count that no one can see. It's happened at Batley and Spen, and it happened with another guy called Billy Howarth. On the same evening, there was a video where he caught Labour taking his votes as an independent candidate and putting them into their candidate's pile. He caused a big fuss. They looked at the votes and said, sorry, it was an accident, right? And took them out, and their Labour candidate lost bigly, right? So what we can see is that they're putting these, but we don't know where. So what we've done with our election petition, and by the way, this is part of ancient law, Ashby versus White 1703 constitutional law, and the other element to this, the law on vote-in goes all the way back to the first statute of Westminster in 1275. And it is talked about in Ashby versus White. It is constitutional law. You couldn't have them by the short and curlies any more than we have, right? But it's cost us so far £6,100, which is more than twice what it costs to do the actual campaign. So it now looks like we can't stand in the other by-elections because we're fighting the fairness of this by-election. And yet the media have blacked it out. It's been issued by the High Court. It's been issued to all the respondents who I mentioned there earlier, which is the returning officer, the head of the Royal Mail, and to the Chief Constable of Cheshire, to Sarah Pouchin herself. Notice Reform haven't even mentioned it, right? That tells you they're part of the system. They do not want to mention this, right? They cannot be trusted. And then also by order of the High Court, I had to deposit £5,000 in cash with the High Court. They issued the election petition. It was then served on them 2 weeks ago. And on June the 13th in the High Court, there is a directions hearing. So to make sure your audience are aware, this is almost like the ancient laws where the law lords or the 2 High Court judges come from the High Court to Runcorn and Helsby. They commandeer an area as a court, a bit like the old assize courts. The judges travel to the area because it's an election area and it's key to the people of Runcorn and Helsby. And then what they do, they also bring with them a registrar who just happens to be a Supreme Court judge. So if there's anyone who thinks out there this is not a serious thing, it is. It is recorded, and on June the 13th, they will announce the date of the trial in Runcorn and Helsby.
And what do you think the outcome will be? Viewers, it's not very often we have guests quoting statute law from 1275. Graham has studied law for over 30 years, and he's an absolute encyclopedia of the Constitution. I think many people were, praising you after last time you came on for your knowledge of the law.
Well, I'm grateful for that. And again, like I say, if you know my history, you know where I come from. I'm about rights. I'm about people, and certainly not. I certainly don't want it. And we'll get onto this subject, no doubt, of mistreating prisoners or removing people from some society for freedom of speech or telling the truth, etc., just because the state doesn't like it. So for me, I will stand for anyone that the state is abusing. People like Lucy Letby, Lucy Connelly, and even Tommy Robinson. I mean, to me, you do not abuse the system or use the weight of the state against an individual. Instead, your rights should carry so much weight that you can fight back against the complete weight of the state when it comes against you. And that's the way England has always been. So again, what you asked the question, what is the remedy? Well, the remedy we've put down plain and clear. We want a complete full recount in a separate shire, in other words, a completely separate area by completely independent counters. And remember what Stalin said, he wasn't worried about who voted. He was always concerned about who counts the votes. Well, so are we, is the answer. And communists have got this way of cheating their way because no one had any sane person would never elect a communist government. They either take it by force at the end of a rifle, or they'll con people and defraud people into that. I believe in free markets, free market economy, and rights of the people against the state. So we have asked for a full recount, and it should show us clearly, unless, of course, they're cheating in the background as we speak, and I suspect they are, it will show us clearly who cheated and why. And you will see that complete collapse of the Labour vote, the complete collapse of the Conservative vote. And again, I believe they've even shifted votes into the Green pile, because the Green are about as communist as you can possibly get. If there's anything that's lefter than Labour, it is the Green Party. And I believe they're increasing their numbers by fraud. And what we intend to do is highlight that. So the second outcome of that, because it is such a serious event, in bearing in mind that the English Parliament is the mother of all parliaments, we have also asked for punitive damages against Cheshire Police, against the Royal Mail, and against a returning officer who just happens to be a Crown servant in this case, because he acts for the Crown.
Wow, that's phenomenal. So what was the time frame again on this remedy? When can we expect some news?
Well, it's in the public interest that this is heard prior to any other by-elections, or certainly, and it could cause another general election. That's how big it is. So on June the 13th is a directions hearing where two judges will set the date of the trial, and it is a trial where I'll be presenting the case and our statements and our witnesses, and then the judges will make a decision. The respondents, as I've already mentioned, will put their position. And again, what we should see is the judges, if there is any justice, will say, to us, it's obvious there is something seriously wrong with the count, and they should issue a direction or order of the court that there be a full and independent at the actual trial, a full and independent recount. When will that happen? I can't give you the date. I don't know the date until the judges set it. In my opinion, it would have to be before any other by-election. So they would hold off by-elections until this. This is why it's big news, because you can't, if there is known systemic fraud, and that's what we're talking about in our election system, you cannot take this forward until that is resolved.
So if this forces a general election, would that be the end of Keir Starmer's reign?
Very much so. Let me put it this way. It's fairly obvious. And just to make sure your audience are clear, when I stood in Chorley, which is just up the road in Lancashire from Runcorn and Helsby, I received 1,007 votes. So, you know, my vote increase, and especially as who we support, which is pensioners, disabled people, the rule of law, no usury, and self-determination. That's what people are really looking for. And especially in a situation where we went through lockdown, etc., and all our rights being taken away, people are looking at us and understanding who and what we represent. And we've got no whips. So we represent the constituents, not a political party. The political party is a brand, and the brand is England, and the manifesto is the English Constitution and your common law rights. So when you look at all of that and understand exactly what it is, you understand that it can bring down the government, because there will be, I would say, the people would say, so they cheated to get into power. And by the way, just to make sure I'm clear on this, anyone who doesn't vote, you are complicit and assisting and aiding the enemy by not voting. The way America took back America, and they're doing it constitutionally, was they got everyone out to vote. Anyone who doesn't vote, you make it very easy for either side to cheat. When you overwhelm the system with your ballots, it's very difficult for them to cheat. So, and again, if you don't want to vote for a particular person, you simply write, I do not consent, Ashby versus White 1703, and that is a valid ballot. And if those ballots was higher than the actual candidate, you have created what's known as a constitutional crisis, because all three elements of the separation of powers have to come in to discuss it. And obviously someone like me would be fighting the corner of whoever that person was.
I just want to read you this headline on the screen. Political favourability ratings May 2025. Keir Starmer falls to the lowest net favourability rating on record, while positivity towards Nigel and reform rises, the last month has been an eventful one, with Reform UK's gains in local elections surpassing expectations and leading to Labour adopting a tougher immigration stance in an attempt to win over Reform voters. So as the public view of Britain's major politicians and parties shifted since last month's favourability tracker, just 23% of Britons now express a favourable view of the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, a 5-point drop from this time last month, and equaling his July 2021 nadir as opposition leader. The proportion of Britons with an unfavourable opinion of the Labour leader has risen from 62% in mid-April to 69% today. Great. And Starmer's net favourability rating has sunk to -46, his lowest ever recorded by YouGov. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you've only got to look at that, right, and understand the simplicity of what I'm saying. Starmer goes to an area as a suburb or a home county, if you want to call it that, of Liverpool. He says, I effing hate Scousers. Well, he said Liverpool, but that's what he's actually saying. The candidate himself gets done for beating up a constituent, right? He's got, and then you've got that there showing who, don't forget, he's betrayed the disabled, he's betrayed the pensioners, he's took everything away from pensioners. We're already struggling out here. And what has he done? And people honestly believe that they still, that reform only just beat them. I don't think so. It's fairly obvious a major fraud has taken place.
All right, so you've got a question here from Susan. How long do they keep the ballot papers for?
Quite a few years. I believe it's 7 years. It may be longer. But we're also looking at tooting as well, because it'll call the tooting by-election into disrepute as well.
So the last time we talked, you discussed who was profiting from the deluge of asylum seekers, and now Labour's talking tough on that front. Is that just to get votes and they're not actually going to do anything about it? They're just posturing?
They are, without any doubt whatsoever, posturing. The easiest way to deal with, there's an easy way of dealing with the migrants, and that is to pick them up and take them straight to St Helena, which is an island in the mid-Atlantic. It's where we put Napoleon and where he died on that island. That island, we spent 285 million putting a brand new airport in. The islanders want jobs. We'll give them jobs and just send them people there. As soon as you start doing that, you don't need to go to Rwanda and all that. That's just nonsense. That is complete nonsense. You take them to an area that is under complete control as a dominion of England. You ship them out to there, and then you say your next stop basically is going back home, and your country is going to pay for it. What do you do then? You use, if you've got a strong enough government, you do exactly what President Trump is doing. You use tariffs. You rebuild our economy. You rebuild our industries, our shipbuilding, our coal industries, etc. And there are ways of doing it. We would absolutely fly it. We put, and I'll give you an example. All you do is put 100% tariff on France, and you say all of your goods, all of your vehicles, your Citroens coming in, and your Renaults, lorries, etc. All of your foods and fruits and wines, etc. 100% tariff until you stop them boats. And if you don't stop them boats, that's what the tariff is, right? You will see it change overnight.
Yeah, good point. So next viewer question is, if Starmer goes, won't we just end up with someone even worse from the Labour side?
Well, the answer is you need to take, we need another general election, but fair and free elections, where we are all given all equal access to the media. That's not happening. The only way we're getting access to the media free and fair is alternative view channels like your own. I mean, I loved it. Not long after you had me on, you had Paul Golding from Britain First. Now, I'm not a unionist, but I don't disregard lots of things he says. Lots of things he says I agree with. The unionist element is the bit that I completely disagree with, because it's a political union. the same as the USSR and the same as the European Union. It's no different. It means that ruling classes can take control of us, which is what they're doing. So again, just to say that, people need to understand the branding, and the branding is England. We exported the English language all over the world and the English common law as the fairest social justice system in the world. And again, that's what we're standing up for. So just to make sure everyone's aware of this, the only way you're going to get fair representative people again is if you vote for someone who, like an English Constitution party. So we're English constitutionalists, and we've got no whips. If you vote for anyone who puts their party before the country, and all of the uni-party currently do that, and they put the union before the actual countries as well, they're no good to anyone.
So if reform gets in, what do you think they will actually implement policy-wise?
Nothing. And the biggest reason for that is the people running the civil service are Fabians, and the Fabian Society run that. So in other words, what I'm saying to you is there is a non-elected bureaucracy that governs this nation, and you can't get past that. The only way you can remove that unelected bureaucracy is to elect someone who says, take down a union and remove that British bureaucracy. Once you've taken that out of the way, you go back to something called distributed governance, which is the way we was governed. In other words, Cheshire would be Cheshire again, Yorkshire would be Yorkshire again. You have your own independent little parliaments, and as long as you don't go against the law of the land, they then can make their own laws, etc. And therefore, you've got distributed governance, which is the antithesis to globalism. That's why they hate England.
So your next question is from Truth Crusader. Are reform the new wing of the uni-party?
Yes.
So it's an illusion of choice, is it, all this posturing on immigration? Very
much so. It is absolute BS, which a lot of what they're coming out with. I'll give you an example. If a leader of the true political party that believed or an ideology of capitalism and free markets was true to his word, he certainly wouldn't have said we're going to take off the benefit caps of 2 children, right? Because what that does is encourages people on benefits, the wrong type of people really, to have children. What you need to do is put tax allowances in for the more children you have. So you encourage people to work, and you say the more children that you have, the less tax you will pay, right? That encourages a nation to get off their backsides and work, right? The ones who don't want to work will be the ones who won't be having the children because they won't afford it. And certainly lots of them types of people are the very people that are coming here just for benefits, and they will leave.
Wow. All right. Well, what about Tommy then? Could he start his own party?
Well, I did offer that he could stand in Runcorn and Helsby if he wanted to, and he could do that as a prisoner. He never got back to me. I did speak to or try to contact Rupert Lowe. He never come back to me. The problem is you've got too many people that are conning people into believing they're something that they're not, right? So I'm not having a go at Tommy Robinson. Some things he does, I'll shout him down for it. Other things I'll shout him up for it. What's gone on with him is an absolute liberty without any, but he's used British solicitors, British King's Counsel to represent him. And I said from the start, if he uses a Brit in there, they are going to be literally siding with the system against him, even if they say they are doing their best for their client. They obviously didn't. If I had been representing him, I can absolutely tell you now, what they've done to him is akin to torture. And if you look at the Criminal Justice Act 1988, Section 134, torture, it's absolutely written in there what they've done to him. So where else can you bring that? Well, under the United Nations Convention Against Torture, he can bring that case in, for example, Texas, but he has to go through the process. No Brit barrister, no Brit solicitor will advise him of that. Whereas I would, and we're already doing it in another case. So again, whilst I understand he's been banged up, locked up, treated badly, had some mental health problems, like been there, seen it, done it. Trust me, it's not a nice place to be, and especially category A conditions. And I've spent quite a bit longer than a few months in them conditions in Hellmarsh, which is a lot worse. And all I can say is I support him as an individual against the power of the state, but he has to understand that the state that is attacking him is the British state. It is the British political union that is attacking him. And possibly one of the reasons, as they keep bringing up, is the English defence, whatever it was, the League or whatever they called themselves. As soon as you put any form of title of English into anything, you will be attacked in this country. I've just come back from Portugal, and they love the English. And you can say I'm English. They understand the difference between British and English, by the way, in Portugal, right? Because they understand they're Portuguese and not European. And the irony that you cannot call yourself an Englishman in England, and if you do, you are attacked as a racist.
So I'm going to read you the charges Tommy now has pending and see if you can explain to me what all this stuff means. Because they're saying that he is currently facing 2 further separate court cases. He's due to appear at Westminster Magistrates Court on June 5th, accused of harassing 2 journalists. He was charged with 2 counts of harassment causing fear of violence between August the 5th and 7th, 2024. He is also facing a separate trial in October next year over an accusation that he failed to provide the PIN for his mobile phone when stopped by Kent Police in Folkestone, July 2024. So could you explain what all that's about, these two more cases?
I don't know the details of them. The terrorist, what they suggest is a terrorist case is absolute BS. And again, I've said to many people, if they stop me at the border and ask for my pins and reference the Terrorism Act, I shall say no comment. They can lock me up for as long as they want, and I will still say no comment. In any situation that you are in with any police, anywhere, you do not say anything to them whatsoever. You say no comment. You plead not guilty. And if it's a jury under indictment, you opt for the jury trial and you represent your own case to the jury, and the jury, again, on a not guilty verdict, it cannot be appealed by the state.
All right, so are they just playing law for them because Tommy's out? They're just trying to put him right back in to get him out of the way and shut him up?
Well, that's what they used to do in the old days. In the old days, you used to get something called a gate arrest. And it wasn't outlawed as such, but it was frowned upon by the system and they stopped doing it. But there are people out there that have said, you know, like category A is nothing to do with the government, etc. Category A, you are actually under the control of the Home Office. But the person that issues you with the category A is the police. So again, the police have got control of you while you're in the prison system. The Home Office have complete control. The governor doesn't have that much control over you because literally you are under the control of the Home Office and the police. So there's lots of things that need to come in. There was a great book written years ago, which was called Prison Law by Simon Crichton. And again, it's a great book. He's still out there as a solicitor. The problem you've got is these solicitors and barristers are British. And these people need to start to learn, especially Tommy Robinson, that when he stands up and starts waving the British flag, he's waving the flag of the enemy that have put him behind a door. And he's not getting that yet. It's no different to what happened in the Soviet Union. if you was a dissident and a Russian dissident, literally in Russia, in the Soviet Union, if you stood up in front of a judge and said, I'm Russian, they'd put you in the gulag, right? Those people, including Alexander Zelensky, he left, went to East Germany, crossed over to West Germany. He then went to America, political asylum, and he wrote many volumes of his books, and not just there, but a few other places. But he called himself a Russian. He never called himself a Soviet. And that's like me, always calling myself an Englishman. I am not British. British is a legal fiction that's been designed by the state, the same as the USSR, to remove your rights as an Englishman, a Scotsman, an Irishman, or a Welshman. So that's what people have got to understand. If Tommy really is serious, he would talk to someone like me that does understand the law, does understand. And again, I'm not, he's got to get over his ego, and he has got an ego, and he's got to start looking at what he's doing, and he's doing it for the country, right? And he's doing it for future generations. And the only thing that can free us now is to free ourselves from the British political union.
So if they come for me, Graham, can I contact you?
Say that again.
If they come for me because of my reporting, can I contact you? Yeah,
of course you can. You have absolutely, especially I class you as a journalist, and there are special rules that are associated with journalists, and people need to understand that.
So Maria is wondering, is the phone pin requirement from the British Union an attack on all journalists?
It's an attack on every single one of us, not just journalists, but also journalists. And if there's any information on them devices which are classed as legal privilege, which again is communication between yourself and your legal advisor, they are not allowed access to that information.
So Dark Side wants to know, are the criminal courts fair? Can I trust criminal defense solicitors?
No.
Why not?
On both counts. Well, solicitors are, first of all, they don't take an oath, and not that the oath system means anything in this country anymore, because it's been destroyed by the Soviets or the British Soviets, and the people who don't believe in God. The British solicitors are feeding off the teat of the British system. It's as simple as that. They are simply administrators and part of the process of putting you behind the door. They're not interested in your rights. And it's only people like me, and don't forget, I am also a registered paralegal. And again, the courts don't have to allow me to speak for you. I have to ask permission to do that. And in certain circumstances, they will allow me permission or what's known as give me an audience. But I have had an audience of the High Court, and I've won the case against the police, or won a stage of the case against the police.
So I'm going to ask you about this lady now. And we saw lots of news about her since we last spoke. She lost her appeal, and now they're also talking about Trump reignites free speech row with Starmer as US says it is monitoring the Lucy Connelly case. And for people not familiar, she's got a 31-month jail sentence. She tweeted after the Southport massacres. It was in the heat of the moment. She took it down. She'd already lost one of her own kids, so it triggered her. And we've got 30 people a day in this country now going to prison for social media posts. Now, what can Trump do? Because this is two completely separate legal jurisdictions, isn't it, Graham?
It is, but it's a common law jurisdiction. But what Trump can do as the executive in America, he can apply tariffs on the British, and he can say, all President Trump needs to do is to say that the British Union is now the Soviet Union, and Commonwealth jurisdictions and common law jurisdictions around the world need to stand up for England. And again, President Trump has stood up for England, expressly England, right? And people need to understand that. What's happened to Lucy is outrageous. Again, it's a good indication. It goes back to the earlier comment that the gentleman made, or the lady made, about can you trust solicitors in a criminal law? And the answer is no. Her solicitors, her barristers advised her to plead guilty. Right, straight away, not guilty. Don't speak to the police. Don't speak to the solicitors. Ask for a jury. Get in front of a jury. And at worst case, if it is what's known as a summons only offence, in other words, it is not a non-indictable offence. Therefore, you don't have an option for a jury. Always opt for a jury, and be brave enough to speak to your peers, right? Because you will get a not guilty. And the major thing is she didn't do that. She took the advice of British solicitors, British barristers, and that's why she's in prison. They are the people that created that. And the High Court judge and the Appeals Court judge that made that ruling is an absolute disgrace. And that under English law, there are ways of dealing with them. If you go back to King Alfred, he actually dealt with 44 judges that caused the death of 44 various different subjects around the world. And how did he deal with that? He said, you have all perjured your oath in the most, serious and heinous way, and he hanged 44 judges. So if you perjure your oath as a judge in the common law, is the most serious offence you can commit. It's next to treason.
All right, so we've got another Lucy to talk about, and the news with Lucy Letby is that the publication date of the inquiry report has been pushed back to early 2026. So what are your thoughts on Lucy's predicament?
Again, I campaigned in Runcorn and Hillsby. One of the things that you used to be able to do prior to Margaret Thatcher, yet again, was that if you was wrongly convicted, you could campaign as a member of parliament in your constituency, and then if the local people knew, a bit like the old oath system, if they knew you was innocent, they'd vote for you and they would elect you as an MP and give you a voice in parliament. That was removed by Margaret Thatcher, and it was because of the IRA. She removed that because the IRA lifers were being elected to Westminster, and then what she did was she made it that if you had a sentence of more than 2 years, and that meant you had to be serving more than a year actually in prison, then you couldn't. So if you got 6 months, which is why I said to Tommy Robinson, you should be standing for election, you'd win. And obviously you never come back to me. But Lucy Letby, the hospital that she was at come within the area slightly of the constituency of Runcorn and Hillsby. So on my campaign, I was talking about Lucy Letby and saying that this is first of all, this is, how can I put this in the clearest possible terms? She's a whistleblower, and this is a direct attack on whistleblowing, and especially any form of whistleblowing against the National Health Service, which has become a socialist religion. They are doing more harm than good, and obviously they are now harming babies in baby wards where you've got raw sewage running down. Don't forget the other part of this story to your audience, and I think this is crucially important, and people must understand this, that a guy come forward and was financing, he was a multi-billionaire, and he was financing her appeal. He had recently been found not guilty in America of a major fraud against Hewlett Packard, and they said it was a national security issue. Him and his co-defendant, both from England, were found not guilty. They come back to England. He happens to be a statistician. He's on a £300 million boat in the Mediterranean, and it sinks, kills him and his family. Within 2 hours, his co-defendant in Cambridge gets run over and killed. On the same day, within 2 hours. And them people was backing that lady's appeal, right? So all I'm saying to people is I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and everything is a conspiracy until it goes in front of the jury and the jury finds you guilty or not guilty.
Wow. Well, thanks for all the questions that are coming in, folks. Please keep them coming in. We've got over 1,000 watching live. And this is part 2 with Graham. Link for part 1's in description. His X is in the description. And his website, I'll put all of them in the live chat right now. And I will keep your questions flowing. Let me just put these in the live chat first so you can follow his work, go to the website, follow him on X. And we have got from Jew Princess. Can we dissolve the king? Can we dissolve the Labour government?
The answer to that is, in my opinion, as a constitutionalist, the king has already abdicated. Where do I get that from? The Glorious Revolution and the statements made by Lord John Somers and who became the Lord Chief Justice Holt. So they basically stated that if a king does something that purges his oath, he doesn't have to do it in writing. It can be by his actions. And I think we can clearly see that the King of England has abdicated by his non-action in taking back control of the realm. Can we dissolve the Labour government? Again, there are ways of doing it. I won't go too far into it on this, but yeah, we have, as English men and women, the absolute right to take back our country if the country is being run tyrannously, which it is.
Can the UK be dissolved? That's from Nath.
Yes, easily, very simply. The UK is simply dissolved. And again, we're unique in the world to be able to have this. Very similar to the USSR. When they dissolved the political union of the USSR, it went back to being a commonwealth of nations, which it is now. It has its own constitution, etc. Russia and separate nations. So it isn't part of a political union anymore. The simplest way to do it is to void, not repeal. They're two separate legal terms. You void the acts of union for being in bad faith. England and Scotland would then be, again, independent nations. Ireland, again, what we're saying is Northern Ireland should be a complete independent nation, no different to the Isle of Man. The Isle of Man was never in the European Union, for example, because its own parliament elected not to be. So it didn't charge their people VAT. There was no VAT on the Isle of Man, which is why people bought various things in the Isle of Man and then crossed back over the channel into England. Not saying that I ever did that, but you get the idea. And what really happens is that you go back to being what we used to be, right? And so what did we used to be? And that is a brotherhood of nations. You go back to the union of the crowns. And then if Scotland or England decides they don't want to have a monarchy anymore, the common law can deliver you one of two things: a republic or a monarchy. So we would still have the constitution, we still have the common law, and we would be an independent nation. As for Wales, Wales joined England, and it was done by it was an English king with Welsh. He was a Welsh descent, and that happened in 1536. Wales are quite welcome to be completely independent. We believe in self-determination for nations. We even believe that Cornwall should be completely independent. It's not a negative thing, it's a positive thing.
Next viewer question: is the monarchy a corporation?
There's lots of corporations. Corporations have been there for many, 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 many centuries in different variations. But you must remember, I believe it was, I can't remember the name of the case, but it was in 1612. And Sir Edward Coke actually delivered a judgment on what's being discussed there with corporations. And at the end of the day, it's very similar if you want to talk about the king can do no wrong, but his servants can, right? So you'd sue the servants of the crown, but even the king in itself is a legal fiction. So technically it is. How you would argue that in a court, because many of the judges today don't know their arse from their elbows.
Victoria is asking, are the monarchy and the UK Gov in a catch-22? If the king threatens to dissolve parliament, then government will threaten referendum on monarchy.
Well, the easiest thing to understand about that, and again, I could go into the law in detail with that one. The monarchy can dissolve parliament tomorrow if it wanted to, and there is absolutely nothing anyone could do about it. It could go in front of the King's Bench, and it would end up in front of the Supreme Court. We do have a separation of powers, but if the parliament is seen to be harming the nation and harming the peace of people, the king should step in and dissolve it. Can Parliament threaten a referendum on the monarchy? It can threaten what it likes, is the answer.
Lenny wants to know if you know the name of the company that Prince William is on the board of.
He's probably on the board of a few companies. Is it Serco?
Oh, God. Profiting from the bloody asylum seekers, Serco. Truth Crusader is asking, does the Constitution concept come from the Greek rather than the Roman administration system?
Greek. So the Greek system was more of a confederacy, whereas the Roman system and the Roman administration system. So just to make sure people are aware of this, the British Union is an extension of the Roman system, and the Roman system was not good at all.
All right, Spooky Spoon, how can we get the king to get off his butt and do something to save the country?
Protest against him.
He's doing the complete opposite, isn't he, right now?
No, I have never. So again, for all those people who are royalists and monarchists out there, there have been many times in our history when the king has gone against the people, and this is one of those times.
Yeah, and they're just in our face doing it. It's terrible.
Well,
so,
I prefer public.
Do you think there should be a referendum on Europe and the monarchy?
When you say referendum on Europe, I don't understand. There's already been one. We should never have gone into the European Union in the first place. It goes against the supremacy clause of the English Bill of Rights. As for the monarchy, I would have a referendum tomorrow. But the problem you've got is that the socialist communist system is controlling the broadcast media, and therefore you would not be informed enough to make a proper decision.
So, DCAT, the UK is not a corporation in the legal sense. UK PLC is not a legal entity. A sovereign nation with a government and a parliament, not a single corporation. Anything to add to that, Graham?
The only thing that I will say to people is you should always remember there is a separation of powers. So there are the three estates. Technically, there's the fourth estate, which is the jury. But the three estates are the monarchy, parliament, and the judiciary. In effect, we are beneficiaries of our common law rights. We are the beneficiaries of the Constitution, and it is the separation of powers which are the trustees. That is failing currently, and it is a very simple concept, and people are not taught it in school.
All right. From Ian, do you agree that the UK's largely uncodified constitution makes us quite flexible?
The common law, the common law constitution, as it's described. Again, if I was to show you volume 10, which is this one here. So again, this is not a green screen. This is real. right? So when you say there's not much constitutional law, there's volume 10 constitutional law. There's lots of bits and pieces in there. I use this quite regularly. There's quite a bit of our constitution that is written, but the beauty of England is it's 1100 years old, and the common law allows the judges, as part of the stabling system, to turn the gas up or turn the gas down. They're given quite a bit of power under the common law to operate, unlike a fully codified constitution, which is the United States of America. You have to go through an amendment process, etc. That can cause a lot of problems. But the major issue really for me is the oath system. It needs to be changed, and it needs to be a simple change to the oath system where the judges and everyone take an oath to, one, England as a nation, not the British or Britain, but England as a nation, and two, to the Constitution, because there is a Constitution. To be fair, it's largely written, not unwritten. It's just in many different documents. And just to make sure you're clear on this, we did used to have a codified constitution under Cromwell. All right. And 2 years after he died, the king and his merry men dug him up and stuck his head on a spike.
Next question. How do places like Rotherham and Bolton ever become English again?
I've got a whole plan for that. It's quite simple. You cut off all the benefits to the people. So under the English system of law, the Constitution, especially the Bill of Rights, Sharia is already unlawful. You enforce the Constitution, then people will leave.
What would Graham do if he got into Parliament as Prime Minister?
I don't want to be Prime Minister. I would rather be the Lord Chief Justice, and you will see everything change, including seeing the people that have perjured their oath in every walk of our separation of powers. You will see them tried, fairly of course, in front of a jury, and if found guilty of perjury and committing treason, they will be hung. So make me the Lord Chief Justice and you will see justice.
Amy wants to know, I agree with a lot of what Graham is saying, but is he racist? Does he want a divided country?
So I don't understand what that means. So first of all, when you talk about racism, for example, you cannot officially under the Constitution of England be a member of Parliament, Lord, be a police constable, or have any position of profit unless both of your parents were English. So you must be born of English parents. The reason why that was brought in was nothing to do with race or colour. It was brought in because the Dutch king, who was in charge of the country at the time, was getting his mates in and they was robbing people. Not when I say robbing people, I mean they was taking profit from the country and taking it back to Holland. So what we did was we created the Acts of Settlement to stop that. It's nothing to do with the colour of your skin, but it's everything to do with looking after the realm, the country and the people that are building the country, which were the English. On the other part of that question about division, I want everyone to remember this. The British and the European Union are still dividing England into 9 regions. And when they speak of the United Kingdom, they then say the nations, talking about Scotland, Wales and Ireland, and then they refer to the regions of the UK. They don't even say the name England. So anyone out there who talks about division, you want to be looking at what they're doing to our country, which is dividing us into 9 regions and destroying England.
Do you feel it is dangerous to discuss these topics?
Yes.
Can you give an update on your litigation initiated in Texas?
Right. So at the moment, we've got a hearing coming up on June the 13th in this country. We have to find out what's going on in this country before we can progress into Texas. But there is an element of that, which is the torture side of it, that we will be bringing in Texas.
What are you guys up to in Texas?
Well, so Charlie Staples, who was tortured by the British police, we took it through the system under the Criminal Justice Act 1988, Section 134, torture. It then had to go to the Attorney General. The Attorney General didn't give it to us. It went to the Court of Appeal. It went to the normal High Court. Then we went to the Court of Appeal. We got a knockback on both, basically because they're protecting the British system against a torture charge. And now it's opened the gates for us to bring it under universal jurisdiction in Texas.
From Trevor, those of us with dual heritage, thanks to the former Commonwealth, where do we stand in your plans?
Well, when you say dual heritage, I don't understand what they mean. So if you've got a Scottish father and an English mother, and you was born in England, you're English, right? If you then moved to Scotland and you swear allegiance to Scotland and their constitution and their Roman administrative law, and you want to be Scottish, then you're Scottish. That's it. But this nonsense that is put out there that you're British because you've got makes me laugh when people say, well, I'm British because my dad's Scottish, my mum's English, right? That's not where it come from. It come from the British Nationality Act of 1981 and 1947, when they completely removed English, Scottish, Welsh and Irish and stuck on your forehead British. And the reason they did that was because all the time you're wearing a legal fiction that says British, you've got no English rights. So for me, it's obvious, but to many people out there, they have been indoctrinated to think something that is completely wrong.
Why are the social services so powerful, and how can the corruption be beaten?
They are so powerful because what they have is access directly to something called the family court, and the family court has become a reincarnation of what we used to call the Star Chamber, which makes all the decisions and thinks it can't be appealed anywhere else, which is wrong. If you go back to a number of issues previously, particularly one by Sir John Laws, which was Carr and others, 2009, 2011, 2012, went all the way to the Supreme Court, and he basically says everyone comes under the jurisdiction of the common law, no matter who it is or what it is. So again, it's people being ill-advised by British solicitors and British barristers, and they've allowed this to happen. And the people that are really being targeted in this system are the white English working class kids and the white English working class parents. And we need to stand up for ourselves under English law, real law, not the nonsense other people are putting out there.
What's your take on the Bills of Exchange Act?
I don't know what do you mean I don't know what they mean my take on it. The Bills of Exchange Act of when? So yes, there is a Bills of Exchange Act, but what my take on it is not really there.
All right, who is the power behind all of this? Starmer is just a puppet.
I completely agree with you. It's a bit difficult to say. I think there's a layered system. The easiest way to say this, I don't think Satan is one person. I think dark personality, and that means narcissistic. Dark personality covers 4 types of people. It's a type of brain function: narcissist, psychopath, Machiavellian, and sadist. That's 10% of the population that elevate themselves. Don't matter what colour your skin is, all over the world. That personality type, they're very. They've got no conscience whatsoever, and they only ever do harm. And if there's anyone who's ever been married to a narcissist, you'll know what I'm talking about.
How do we stop Sharia in no-go English areas?
You enforce the English Bill of Rights. The English Bill of Rights forbids Sharia, and it forbids Talmud, and it forbids Jewish cults. It forbids any religious cult.
Has the welfare state destroyed the UK?
Yes.
Okay. Do we need a new digital rights?
There's one on our website. If you look on our website, you'll see the English digital Bill of Rights. So your rights under the English common law and the Constitution, etc., would stay. That's how they're supposed to be. But what we've done is written an English digital Bill of Rights, which means one of the things there, for example, you cannot have a central bank digital currency. You must always have cash in society, etc. And there's lots of different things in that digital Bill of Rights that we've written out.
If found guilty in Texas, do the Texans come and arrest the guilty and plonk them in a Texas prison?
Yes. And by the way, that's international law. That's not it is under universal jurisdiction for torture.
Are we getting closer to taking England back or not?
Definitely. The more English flags I'm seeing out there, the major thing is people need to free their mind from the indoctrination of British and understand that you are English, Scottish, Irish, or Welsh, or Cornish.
Who is responsible for social care costs of the elderly?
That's a good question. The answer to that, and I have done various shows on this, the local authorities have been wrongly forcing elderly people to sell their homes to pay for care in care homes. That is actually illegal, and there is a set process for it. There was a big article written in the Daily Telegraph a few years back, and I've put it on my show a few times. You can legally challenge that, and you should win. And if your parents or someone you know has been forced to sell their home to pay for care, and that care was at such level that they needed a form of hospitalised treatment, which is a care home, it is the local authority that has to pay for that, or the National Health Service, right? Because you was promised cradle to grave, and that is the law, and that's what they had to pay for. They've got no right to take your assets to pay for it.
Can Sadiq Khan be removed?
Yes.
How?
Well, there's a few ways it can be done, but legally speaking, he is in breach. Again, we arrested him January the 13th, 2018 for subverting the English Constitution at the Fabian Society event. Sadiq Khan is a Fabian, an executive member. Keir Starmer is an executive member. Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, executive members. And people must remember the last time a full cabinet of Fabians was in power, like we've got now, that was Tony Blair, and we went to a war with Iraq on a lie. So Fabians, socialism, Marxism, which is exactly what it is, and they are the most corrupt people out there.
So, do you think Tommy Robinson has a good chance of staying out of prison with his next case beginning in June?
Not if he uses British solicitors or British barristers, no. He'll go straight back in there.
And would you welcome Tommy to join you? Graham's already said he's reached out, haven't you?
Yeah, no, I've reached out to him. I mean, again, he's got. You're never ever going to align with someone completely. But I do not consider Tommy Robinson has ever been a racist, right? I'm not a racist. You're not a racist. We're talking about our culture and our country being destroyed. We're talking about rape and torture gangs roaming the realm and doing as they will, and no justice for it. What I'm saying is, he has been a voice. People standing up now, voice for many years on that as well. So again, there are many things that we align on. The thing that people really do need to understand, and it's a shame that Britain First have got a logo and an emblem and a brand of Britain, because they don't understand the real concept of what's causing the problem. So yeah, I do. I haven't got a problem with Tommy Robinson.
Can we remove the Fabians from Parliament?
The answer is they should all be done for subverting the English Constitution, which is in effect treason.
Is Article 61 Magna Carta invoked?
It was invoked in 2002 by the Magna Carta Society. John Hurst was the principal behind that. John Bigley, to others. It was a proper process. It is still in full force. In fact, if you go on YouTube, you will see Lord Judge, an English Supreme Court judge, talking exactly about Article 61, why it exists, and it is still in existence and it is still available. But there is a process that you must follow. And again, people need to understand that due process is very important. There is a method and a way you put it in place. That was put in place for a specific reason. And that specific reason has now passed. So is it still in effect? Technically, no, because we're not members of the European Union, although we've just been taken back in by the back door under a lie.
Chris is saying, if everyone retweeted Lucy Connelly's tweet, could that make her sentence void, as not everyone would be able to go to prison, and the precedent of her conviction would be void?
No.
What do you mean? It wouldn't work.
No, it wouldn't work. No. The best way. No, yeah, exactly. Again, that's the type of thing that just calls. I mean, again, if it's an idea that comes out, just to make sure everyone's aware of this, there was a general talking about Churchill during the Second World War, and he said about Churchill, he had hundreds of ideas, and he said out of 199 of them were completely mad, stupid, and ridiculous. And he said, but one, just one, was absolute genius, right? So about ideas and putting through, that's why I say there's no such thing as a stupid question, right? Because only intelligent people ask questions. And that's the great thing about your audience tonight. Putting all these questions in there is showing they are an intelligent audience. Only intelligent people ask questions.
Next question is from Pia. If Starmer stays in power until the next election, will we be able to undo the damage if not voted in again?
Well, so you've on the camera. So you've frozen a little bit on there. If Starmer stays in power until the next election, will we be able to undo the damage if they've not voted in again? We can always undo every bit of damage they've all done by voiding the Acts of Union. It is a complete people's reset.
What do you know about the Baron David Ward affidavit from 2015?
Nothing is the answer.
Is council tax legal?
In my opinion, no, it isn't legal, and it's not legal because it was actually passed as an act of parliament illegally because it did not receive royal assent.
Wow. How can we enforce the English constitution, being that we are dealing with lawlessness?
That's a really good question. There's two answers to that. You use the ballot to its maximum. So in other words, if you don't vote, you're actually aiding and abetting the enemy. The other way of doing it, if it goes that far, and I believe it possibly will, under the English common law and the constitution and our ancient rights and customs, we have the right to armed rebellion. In other words, we have the right to take back this country by force if the people above us are tyrannous, which they are.
Isn't Starmer trying to get us back in the EU by making payments? And if so, is that treason?
Yes. And he's also given away our complete control, command and control of our military, which means we are no longer sovereign.
Would you remove England from international laws and agreements?
The answer is that if you void the Acts of Union, that is exactly what happens.
How do we stop all this data sharing and facial recognition stuff?
Good question. If you look at the English Digital Bill of Rights on our website, you will see that we have put a proposal forward, which is the English Digital Bill of Rights that stops that. In other words, you are copyrighted to your image, to your gait, to your retinas, your blood type. Every part of you is copyrighted to you, right? So therefore, if anyone wants to use that, including the state, they have to either pay you or enter into a negotiation with you to use it.
Did you see the Mrs. Macron claw him in the face on the plane. What's your thoughts on that? What's your thoughts?
My thoughts is that the absolutely gorgeous stewardess was bending over, giving him some coffee, and she didn't like the way that he was looking at her. That's my thoughts on that.
What do you think of the Chagos Islands deal?
Absolute disgrace. Again, they did try and bring an injunction. Some of the potential constitutional laws, it would have been an idea if they'd spoken to me, and I would have given them a lot of help on that case, and I believe they would have won it.
Do we need to have local militias and local volunteer constables?
Absolutely. Militias are an honourable thing. They are completely detached from the government, and you are entitled to have an armed militia. And under the English Bill of Rights, you have the absolute right to self-defence and to bear arms as a Protestant for your defence and the defence of the community, as is still the right in Northern Ireland.
Are you aware of local government 1888 section 79 subsection 2, which means that councils are liable for all taxes on property?
No, I'm not aware of that. I don't really get involved with the nitty-gritty. There's some people that deal with the local laws, and I'm quite happy to talk about the laws that have been put in place. My opinion is, as a constitutionalist, that what gives those people authority to write them laws and to deploy council tax against you unlawfully and go through the courts to take your house or whatever they want to do, liability acts and all sorts of things, it is all unlawful, because what give them the authority in Parliament, which was the Local Authorities Act, I think it was 1992, whenever it was unlawfully enacted because it didn't go through the proper process. That is unconstitutional. Therefore, its authority is null and void.
What do you think of King Charles keeping mum about everything? Why do our armed forces, who do our armed forces support, us or the government?
That's a good question. King Charles has betrayed us without any doubts whatsoever. Our armed forces currently have still got this thing where they believe they are British and support a British Union. Someone spoke to me the other day about the Gurkhas being British, and I said, yeah, they're also trained in riot control. And as soon as the government deploys them against you as the English, you will see how British they really are. And when I say British, meaning they will absolutely annihilate any Englishman standing up against them.
Will Starmer face justice, or he's untouchable, isn't he?
I think he will. My personal opinion is you're going to see the justice in America first. It will be done under the Constitution. There will be people tried for treason in America and executed. Once that happens, people will be asking, what is the Constitution and where do these treason laws come from? And then people will refer back to England, the English Constitution and the treason laws of England. And you will see people facing justice in this country.
What is your view of the devolution introduced by Tony Blair?
A con is the answer. Scotland, just to give you an indication, Scotland is a region of the European Union. It does not really have a devolved parliament. What it actually has is an assembly. They haven't deviated from the original plan of the European Union. And just to give you an example, they removed the 7 constabularies, police constabularies of Scotland. They replaced it with a police state, which is Police Scotland. It is a region. And the sooner people realise that the regionalisation of England is exactly the same, there is no such thing as levelling up. There is only bringing all of the other regions of England down to the same level as London. And what you're going to see is every region with an Islamic mayor.
Did the king come to the throne legally?
My opinion is a number of, it's certainly since 1849, every monarch has breached or perjured their oath, and therefore my only opinion of the monarchy is it needs to go.
It is sad that the American people know more about our constitution than we do. The Acts of Union saying the British have to communicate our rights to us. Any thoughts?
Yeah, no, the Acts of... So let me just show you this. Here's a little document here. Most people who've ever been to America will understand this. There's a little booklet, and it says the Constitution of the United States. It's the We the People documentation, and everyone in America is actually taught that at school. There's another book here. Again, it's just by chance I've got it here. Anyone want to go and read that? It's called Reading Law, Antonian Scalia. And again, he refers to English law on numerous occasions in that, and where the Second Amendment in America and the First Amendment and the Fifth Amendment, in fact, every amendment, come from England, right? So once people understand how English common law and the Constitution was exported to the United States of America. So again, what that lady just said there, the Acts of Union does state, I believe it is Article 4, and it says that these rights must be communicated to the people, and they're not. It was removed from the curriculum in the early 1970s and the bar exams again in the early 1970s. And the reason they did that is because they didn't want you to know that you had inalienable rights.
Are we seeing a change in the New World Order?
Yes, without any doubts whatsoever. You're probably going to get a multipolar world, which is a good thing. But again, what you will be seeing, in my opinion, is the European Union completely dissolved, the British political union completely dissolve and go back to nationhood, where nations will independently trade with each other. And that includes the United States of America, meaning they will go back to the Confederacy and will not be controlled by a federal government. It will go back to being the states make their laws, but you have an overarching constitution, the same as what England had.
Should our sons fight for Starmer in World War III?
Absolutely not. But unfortunately, this treasonous government and the one before it and the one before that and this king signed up to the European Union for conscription. You won't have a choice.
Do Scots have a right to militias?
Yes.
Are the English allowed to bear arms? Only if you're a farmer, isn't it?
Sorry?
We can only bear arms if we're a farmer or we've got a license.
No, everyone has the right to keep and bear arms. Every single person in this country. It's a constitutional right. You can look it up in the English Bill of Rights.
No one is above one another. Do you agree with that?
Depends what you mean by that. Do I believe that some people are more intelligent than others? And does that mean someone more intelligent is above you? It depends on the situation. That's a bit of a wide-ranging question. If I believe we all have equal rights, absolutely. Should we all be treated equally under the law? Absolutely. Does that mean that there shouldn't be a two-tier justice system? Absolutely.
Will Islam become the dominant religion in the UK?
If we don't stop it, yes. Islam is a political ideology. It is not a religion.
Is the City of London a separate entity like Washington, D.C. and the Vatican City?
Yes. It shouldn't be, but it is.
There's been a news story that we've been reporting on quite a lot on this channel because the mainstream media have done a blackout on it. And that is that 2 Starmer properties and a car on separate nights were firebombed. And the arrestees all look like they've come out of a boy band, gay bar kind of energy about them, which seems really weird because they've got like ads up saying that they want their male models, allegedly male escorts, rent boys. And this viewer is asking, what do you think about this peculiar case? Because how would they know where he lives and what his car is, etc.?
It's fairly obvious to me that he is what he is. Let me put it that way. But it's interesting that you talk about a blackout, because the blackout is exactly what the current media are doing with, and thanks to alternative news media like yourselves, that's exactly what they're doing, is blacking out the Runcorn and Helsby petition. So do I believe that they can block these things out from the people knowing about it? Absolutely, yes. Do I think it is probable that what the alternative media are saying and reporting on is true? Yes.
Are the boat people untrained soldiers?
Possibly, but they are more likely to be trained soldiers. They certainly would have all seen some form of combat.
Can we stop mosque building or limit its numbers?
Most definitely we can. There's someone out there currently that tries to do it as much as he can. I forget what he's called now. It's something like Mosque Busters or something, Mosque Busters. Again, he's a guy who's been going around the country and he uses planning law to stop it. The problem that you've got is that the government are allowing this, and the planning applications and the final planning application on appeal goes to the Deputy Prime Minister. And if they're crooked and they're aligning with Sharia, or and again, remember that Islam in effect is communism with a god.
How does this all affect the other Commonwealth countries like Australia?
Meaning Australia has direct access to the English Bill of Rights, and I am hopefully in discussion with a group of people in Australia. One of them, I think his name is Rod Cullen, and the other, there's another lady called Dawn something, very nice lady, in America. And hopefully I'll be doing a seminar out there, because we do the seminars on the English Constitution. So we come out and actually teach people about the Constitution. Just to give you an example, because that's a really good question, there's a number of issues that happened in Australia. I think it was in 1985 and 1986. If I remember rightly, it was the Governor General and the instructions of the Queen that prorogued the Australian Parliament, because they had done things wrong or were operating against the interests of the Commonwealth and their people. So another issue happened in New Zealand, and it was called the Muldoon versus Fitzgerald case, 1976, where a member of the government there made a decree, for example, about taxes. A normal everyday person stood up and said that's unlawful, took it straight into the New Zealand High Court and said that that's against the English Bill of Rights. It's a pretended law. And the High Court did issue an order and a precedent, and they said, quite right, and they struck down the edict from the government and said, you can't do that.
So here's a question from Steph. You know, if these asylum seekers are poor people, they're broke, how are they paying to get these trips on these boats over here?
The direct answer to that is anyone who's been listening to the news, certainly on alternative media, you'll understand there's a lot of groups of people out there called NGOs, non-government organisations. A lot of that money is siphoned off from your taxes, almost like a money laundering scheme to put the money in the hands of these people. The second thing is that millions and millions and millions, actually billions, of cash was deposited in Iran on two very large military aircraft at the behest of Sadiq Hussein Obama.
Well, if you've got England back in shape, how would you stop the Fabians infiltrating Parliament again?
Quite simply, we would make them a subversive group, and we would ensure that they would never, ever get in power again. Just to make sure everyone's aware, they are almost a secret society, but not a secret society. but they are committed Marxists. Even their website tells you that. And again, it's not just the Labour Party that are Fabians. Members of the Conservative Party are Fabians, which tells you, should tell you something about the Conservatives if you understand that they're committed Marxists. But the thing really to remember is the dark personality. You can test for dark personality, which means psychopath, Machiavellian, or sadist, or narcissist. You can test for that. You can do a brain scan for it, and there's certain other tests that you can do. The objective really is to keep that personality type out of any position of power over you. Meaning, I mean, if you could put it this way, if anyone's ever been married to a narcissist, if you could have done a test that told you that he or she was a narcissist, I'll guarantee you wouldn't have married them. Well, you certainly wouldn't put them in a position of power like a member of parliament, House of Lords, or a judge, or a barrister, or a police constable.
What does Graham think about the middle classes leaving the UK in high numbers?
Is to be expected. But to be fair, the middle class are the ones who have allowed this to happen, without any doubts whatsoever. And whatever country they go to, that country or them countries are in trouble, because they will. It's a bit like what's going on with New York. So New York has created this situation in various other countries, not countries, cities like Chicago, Denver, Colorado, etc. Once these people create this environment and it becomes unsafe, they then up sticks. They've made their money out of the socialist system variously, in pensions, etc. They'll then go to what they call in America a red state, and then they start deploying their same nonsense again, and it's like a cancer, and it spreads. So when these people, so-called middle class, are leaving this country, again, many middle class have degrees, and they have degrees in absolute nonsense. The most important people in this country are working people, the people that actually do the work, and secondly, the trades. I would advise anyone out there, don't get a degree in nonsense, because you're never going to get anywhere in the world, right? You'll be flipping hamburgers in McDonald's. Learn a trade, whatever the trade is, and there's new trades coming along, right? Whether it's bricklaying, plastering, or whatever, the old skills are the best way, and you'll always support your family and earn money.
Should our political system be changed so that, like America, and would it be fairer?
That's a good question. There are elements of our political system that do 100% need to change. Just for example, in America, they have what's known as primaries, which I believe is a good thing. They also have something called the Electoral College, which I believe is a good thing. If it wasn't a good thing, the Democrats wouldn't be attacking it and trying to get rid of it. There are certain elements currently in America that are bad, and I'll give you an example of that. They have methods, and they've used the methods to start to subvert the Constitution by packing out the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court is a separation of power. So what the communists and the Marxists do is pack out that court with their people, and that's how you destroy the Constitution. So they've got to come back in some way of finding a way to stop that happening, and the only real way of doing that is to test the dark personality.
Well, Graham, you've answered nearly all of the questions. We've done 90 minutes. You've been very generous with your time. All of Graham's links are in the description box, and I'm going to put them in the live chat. Is there anything you'd like to say in conclusion to the viewers, my friend?
No, the only thing I will say to anyone is the Constitution is the solution. Support England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, Cornwall as your nation and your ancestors. They give you that. Don't let us be the generation that extinguishes the external flame of freedom for our future generations. Stand up, but do it the right way. Forget the nonsense in the background. And if there's anyone out there that wants to support us, join our party. Or if you want us to come along to your area and do a constitutional seminar, which we talk about this, and most of them last 2 hours of actual instruction of going through it. And the longest I've had so far is 4 hours non-stop of questions and answers from the audience, which I love.
Oh, well, thank you for coming on, spending so long with us and answering all these questions. I'm going to let you go and close the show. So you have a great rest of your day, and give my regards to Mark Atwood. He's a good guy. Cheers.
No, I will do. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Nice one. All right, what a phenomenal guest, folks. Put a 1 in the chat if you'd like Graham to come back and do a part 3. Put a 2 in the chat if that's a nay. I know it's all going to be 1s. Thank you. So we always learn so much from Graham. Yeah, I can see all the 1s piling in. Let me let you guys know what we've got coming up. We've got Kevin Annette coming back Saturday night, 8 p.m. on Who is More Evil? The Mormon Church versus the Vatican. On June 4th, we have got ex-Satanist Zachary King exposing elites and Bohemian Grove. And we've got NMK Ultra Survivor coming up next month. And we've got a lot more getting lined up as we speak. So I'm going to go bed now, folks. Huge thank you for tuning in. And a huge thank you for all of your questions. And hope to see some of you in the next